Week 2 is out of the way, and we got some somber news, yet some kind of good news as well. We'll talk about it all next. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second, and this is your official post-game reaction. Not exactly the way that I wanted this thing to go, but before we get into it all, Marco, my guy, thank you for joining me. How you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going, Jesse? Thank you for having me, man. It's how am I doing? That's a very good question, Jesse.
Yeah.
How is the 49er faithful doing? You kind of have a little bit of excitement because you get a victory, but realistically, how do you be happy after you literally lose Trey Lance to that kind of injury? Very heartful. Hope he gets back healthy. Um, it's rough to see your starting quarterback go down like that.
Yeah, it definitely is. And we're going to let people trickle in. So we're going to start off with something completely off topic that just kind of came across my radar before we went live. We'll just briefly touch on this, and then we'll obviously get into what everybody wants to talk about, what everybody wants to hear us talk about, what everybody's talking about in the chat. But as people are trickling in, I think it's good to talk about this because it is 49er news. Greenlaw was extended for a couple of years. Interesting, right? Like we're seeing Mitch Wishnowsky and Greenlaw both extended in the same week. You know, the 49ers have a lot of free agents as they move forward, and it is nice to lock some of these guys up. Just real quick, your 2 cents on Greenlaw getting extended.
I think it's a smart extension, especially after the game he had last week, right? If I look John Lynch in that front office, I'd be doing the same exact thing. I'd be going to him with the contract extension because I think last week was one of the worst games I've seen from Dre Greenlaw. Now, I don't think Dre Greenlaw is as good as everyone says, but he is a solid linebacker for the 49ers. So I really like them tying up a young player that they drafted, I believe, in the 5th round. So if you look at what the 49ers have done, everyone likes to critique them for how they drafted, but at the end of the day, they don't get credit for drafting guys like Dre Greenlaw. You have to have guys who you can have on cheaper contracts. You could have stick around and be on the 49ers. And I'm glad to see Dre Greenlaw being extended to pair with Fred Warner for the next 3 years, because this year plus 2 years, it's going to be fun to see that linebacking duo build more chemistry and become even better.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about the Trey stuff here in just a second. But yeah, Greenlaw, listen, good extension. Now, I'll say this Greenlaw didn't have the best game last week. I've got a theory on Greenlaw. To me, he was a rookie when Quan Alexander came to this team, right? And if we remember, Fred Warner was very young at that time. Quan was already kind of a proven veteran. I feel like he took on Quan's personality a bit and doesn't necessarily know how to rein it in the way that Quan does, right? And so there's some of that as he's growing into who he is as a player as well. I think that's where some of Greenlaw's fire comes from. Just a theory, but you know, my opinion on maybe the way Greenlaw plays and how he's always played. But that being said, Greenlaw's locked up. Mitch Wishnowsky's locked up. I assume throughout the year we'll see some of these other players go, and then Bosa in the offseason. But let's just talk about it. I mean, we got enough people in here now. I've given everybody enough time. I feel like this is like a work Zoom call. I wanted to give everybody the 2 minutes or so to get it figured out before we talk about the Trey Lance situation. Real quick, Double B Studio says Mike McDaniel's using Tua. How Kyle should have used Trey. Listen, Tua had himself a day today. They came back and won that game. I mean,
But
incredible game. Incredible game.
For Tua, it's pretty easy when you have two dudes running like a 4-2-5. Literally, like, that's how fast the two dudes are. When you're having those two dudes run wide open, right? Like, it's literally the easiest throws you could possibly hit. So, like, when you're having those dudes run wide open like that, I mean, it's kind of hard to say Kyle Shanahan should have used Trey like that because you don't have that speed on the roster. I mean, you do in Danny Gray to some extent, but Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, like, they're just special athletes. And I think that's what Mike McDaniel's using. He's using speed to allow Tua to be good.
Yeah, 100%. Dylan says, I need Kyle gone. I don't care. RG3 vibes, insanity. And official BNA Music says Super Bowl or bust. No excuses, right? Jimmy's a winner. Yeah, Double B Studio coming back in. Run game subpar versus subpar teams. We're going to miss Mike McDaniel, and it's going to show against run dropping defenses. We'll see. I think the 49ers have ran really well in the first 2 weeks. I don't expect that to really change, to be real with you. Things are a little bit different now that Trey's not there. Because that's a big part of their running game. And, we saw that's how Trey got injured. Here was my message. Obviously, I watched the game live. For those of you that watched the game on playback, you saw my live reaction to what happened. As the game went along, we started to figure out what was actually going on with Trey. It's a little difficult, right? Because I'm watching the game live, streaming live with y'all. And so I can't really be on Twitter and get the updates that I normally would. But I eventually, around halftime, got a picture of Trey's leg and realized this guy is done for the season, unfortunately. I think I'm going to try to find some silver lining in this. Obviously, you guys know I'm about as big of a Trey supporter as there is. I wanted them to draft him. I believe in Trey Lance probably about as much as you can as a fan. That being said, let me look at the silver lining in a couple things here and try to maybe boost your guys' moods a little bit. First of all, it happened early in the season. That's good for 2 reasons. One, it gives Trey Lance the best opportunity to be fully healthy early in the offseason and come back and ready to take over this team next year, right? If this had happened week 10, we'd be talking about something completely different. So I think there's some silver lining there. I think the other part of the silver lining is hopefully, and we'll see what happens with Kyle. I know a lot of you want him fired. We'll talk about that as well, but hopefully he realizes you can't turn this kid into a running back. Like, that's not who he is, right? And maybe that'll give him some sense as a play caller going forward. Use him like the quarterback that he is and allow him to make plays with his legs as he so chooses. And I would say the third thing is this. We kind of get our answers this year, right? And I know that Double B Studio was being condescending here with this one where he says Super Bowl or bust, no excuses. Jimmy's a winner. Nobody can say anything after this year. If they don't win the Super Bowl with Jimmy, that's it, right? Like we can move on as a fan base. We can move on. I think we can all agree with that. But also, I think as a fan base, we don't have a choice at this point, right? Like, Jimmy's the guy for the rest of the season. And we have one or two choices. We can continue to fight as we kind of have up to this point. You have a group of people that support Jimmy. You have a group of people that support Trey. I'm on the Trey side. Jimmy's not my favorite quarterback of all time, right? But at the same time, I've always said the same thing. He's a top 22-ish quarterback in the league. You can win games with that. Now, I do not believe they can win a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's why I wanted Trey to play. In my opinion, Jimmy Garoppolo is a net zero quarterback, meaning he's not going to win you a lot of games, not going to lose you a lot of games, but if the team plays perfect, you can win with them. Trey Lance, I thought, would be that same player going into this season. Obviously done differently, but I figured he would be a net zero quarterback. The hope was after 17 games, he could be a guy that can go win you a game or two in the playoffs, which we know Jimmy is not, okay? That was the hope with Trey Lance, be a net zero quarterback. If this team's as good as we think it is, they can win regardless. They've done it with Jimmy in 2019. They did it with Jimmy last year. They can do the same thing with Trey, and then Trey Lance can be a difference maker come playoff time. Well, now we don't get to see that. So I know my expectations, Marco, for the season have changed, and I'll talk about that in a second. But for you, looking at just this injury, when it happened, obviously you were not live with me. Just all the emotions, everything, like what went through your mind as you're watching this play out?
To be straight honest with everyone, I froze. You get that gut feeling. That is pretty bad, right? As soon as he went down and as soon as they started calling for the medical guys, right? I froze. I was like, oh damn, it's serious. When you're immediately calling for the sideline like that, you know something serious.
Mm-hmm.
And right away, I was like, there goes the season. There goes the season. Literally within those minutes. I don't care if Jimmy's on the roster, the season's over. I've been saying this for a lot of people who've been saying you have the good thing is you have Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster. Okay, that's fine. You have Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster. But either way, you're back in a situation where you have a young quarterback next year with the lack of experience. Now, even this year, hopefully he was going to get that experience, but he's only going to have a game and about a quarter of legit experience under his belt. Is going to be your starting quarterback next year. Do you allow the same thing? Does Kyle go into that same mentality of every other team runs their quarterback like this? Well, I'm going to be straight up with Kyle Shanahan, and this is where I disagreed with him. I agree, use your quarterback in a sense of running him when you have to. But Trey Lance is a much better thrower than most of those quarterbacks in their first 2 years. In my opinion, he is a better thrower than Josh Allen in his second year. Josh Allen was struggling a little bit his first 2 years. He is a better thrower than Lamar Jackson in his first 2 years. Those kind of guys had to rely on their legs because of their throwing wasn't there. And I think for me, it just sucks to see because immediately I go to the timeline to see what everyone is saying. And all you see is, I told you so. We told you so.
I
Kyle didn't want Trey Lance. And well, what are we doing here? The kid just got hurt. A 22-year-old kid who plays the game of football just got hurt, and we're sitting here bashing him because he got hurt on a freak injury. It's not like he sprained an ankle. Like he literally snapped his ankle on a freak play. Moving forward, because I know you gave your expectations on the season. I'm a little bit down because after what I just saw
let's hold that one off for a minute because
okay.
I got that as a separate topic. I wanted to get your feelings on this whole thing. Do you blame anybody? Do you blame Kyle? I know that you kind of threw in there like the running. Because a lot of people, I feel like some people are. It's so weird with this whole thing, right? And I'm glad that I'm watching the game live with you guys. Whoever is tuning into that, thank you so much. We have a blast over there on playback, but I'm glad I'm doing that, not on Twitter. I got to be honest with you because I was able to fire off a quick tweet. For the most part, it was received pretty well, just trying to bring the fan base together. But it seems like we're nowhere near that. Like, it seems like everybody wants to place blame somewhere. They want to blame Kyle. They want to, and I see it in the chat, and it's fine. I mean, this is emotions. Get it out. Like, go ahead. But somebody wants to blame Kyle. Somebody wants to blame Trey. Somebody wants to be pissed that Jimmy's playing. Somebody wants to be happy that Jimmy's playing. Like, we're all over the place. There's so much emotion. And I mean, it's natural. Where does your head sit? Like, how do you feel about this whole thing?
So it hurts, right? Because literally you draft a third overall pick quarterback, right? He's supposed to be the future of the franchise. So it hurts, right?
Yeah.
But I understand Jimmy Garoppolo, what he is for, right? I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a good quarterback. He's just not good enough. He's not good enough to get it done in the playoffs. Not good enough to lead a team. So it's a wasted season, in my opinion. The 49ers aren't winning the Super Bowl. You could bet this. You can record this. Send it to me at the end of the season because I'm not going to be wrong. I've seen what happens when teams start playing against Jimmy Garoppolo. And even going into this game, towards the end of the game, the Seattle Seahawks literally adjusted during mid-game to how Jimmy Garoppolo plays and stack the box. And they were forcing him to make throws. And I think that's where I was like, man, like this is exactly why I was excited for a young quarterback because teams weren't stacking the box yet because of the ability of Trey Lance to throw. First throw of Trey Lance's game today, 25-yard pass to Brandon Ayuk, right? So like instantly you see him already in a groove. The offense was moving. They just scored 3 points. I thought they should have went for it early at fourth down there at the goal line. I think you kind of have to go for it there with the young quarterback. Kyle goes for the points, which is a smart decision. I understand that. Next drive, they're already in field goal range. So like he's moving the ball and then snap. And it's like, whoa, all right. no, there goes this season. I don't know about you and everyone else tuning in, but I think the season's done. I think we're done. I think we'll get into the playoffs. We'll get into the NFC Championship. I think we'll lose in the NFC Championship, most likely to a team that we should beat.
Glory says Niners spent 3-1s to get Jimmy to take a pay cut. Double B Studio says Kyle ran 3 first-round picks into the ground. And I think we got a couple more here. Jonathan says, find it ridiculous this is Kyle's fault. Running backs were running good. We talked about this. If Kyle kept playing Trey this way, he was going to get hurt. You guys, that's the consensus, right? That's pretty clear to me. I told you when you were on Grant's show, the kid is not ready.
No, don't do that.
I'm sorry, man. That to me, that's super distasteful. That is, I appreciate you contributing. I appreciate you being a part of the channel, and I'm not going to hold it against you, but that's a distasteful comment, man. The I told you so's right now. This is not it, man. These comments are not it. Now you have the team back in last year's form. Shame it has to go down this way. Jimmy looked decent, minimal reps. Listen, I'll say this, and again, I want to bring the fan base together, but when you have a divisive comment like this, I have to fire back a little bit. Did you see once it started raining a little bit how squirrely that ball got on Jimmy? And that was just a little bit of rain. So we have a group of people that blamed Trey for last week and expected that even though it rained harder than it did there today, the whole game it was raining harder. Don't want to give him any credit for what he did and Trey. And then when it was a monsoon, you want to say, well, Trey Lance, look at how inaccurate he was once it was a torrential downpour. We had some sprinkling and it got squirrely on Jimmy. Come on, man. Don't do this. Don't do this. This is not it. Seth Harvey, Jimmy gonna fail at Promised Land again. Yeah, maybe we'll see. Double B Studios, Kyle's response to Grant and other questions had me pissed. Yeah, it didn't. It's hard, right? Because it's like, here I am doing a show, right? Just hours after this happens. Okay. And I'm a fan of the team. Like I'm emotional, just like you guys are emotional, right? But I got to kind of hold it together and do this show. Just like I would do any post game. I felt like Kyle's got to kind of do the same thing, and it sucks, right? You can tell he feels bad, but it's like he's the leader of the team. He has to hold it together. He can't act like they don't have belief in Jimmy or anything. He's got to kind of hold things together, and that's where he's at as the leader. Neil says, I blame Kyle due to the lack of responsibility.
Kyle took responsibility. He literally said, I wish I could go back and not call plays when my players get injured. Like, what is he supposed to say? Like, oh, I'm glad I called that play because now I get to go back. Like, I don't get what the fans really want Kyle Shanahan to say at this point. Like, do you guys really want him to sit here and say, hey, I should have thrown the ball much more with Trey Lance? I mean, it was literally Trey Lance's third rep in the run game. They're like, it's not like they ran him 20 times in those 3 drives. Like, he literally let him throw 3 times. He ran the ball 3 times. They were running the ball strong with the other running backs. Yes, I do agree that Kyle Shanahan should have stuck with the running backs, Jeff Wilson, Ty Davis-Price. I think he should have stuck with those guys. I agree on that point. There was no need to call any of those zone reads or anything like that at that moment of the game. But either way, Kyle's going back to those zone reads. You never know with football when a player is going to get hurt. Just because he got hurt that play does not mean he wouldn't have gotten hurt 10 plays later on a scramble run, right? So that's the thing where it blows my mind is people were sitting here saying this is Kyle Shanahan's fault, but realistically, Trey Lance literally could have snapped his ankle on a scramble, yet who would they have blamed at that point? Would they have blamed Trey Lance or would they have blamed Kyle Shanahan? I don't get it, Jesse. I really don't.
Yeah, I think this is, to me, this is one of those freak things. I don't know if there is blame, but I want to say this, like, I understand where people are coming from with it. Like, I can't act as if I don't understand where they're coming from. You know, I do get that, but I don't know if I blame anybody. Double B Studio says Trey is hurt because Kyle tried to change Trey. KW2421 says Kyle's not to blame. This is a contact sport and a freak accidents like that happen. Hate Jimmy all you want. He's good, not great. They can win with him. Yeah, and listen, I mean, we can just get into it. I agree. They can win with Jimmy, right? Like, and my expectation is they do win with Jimmy. The difference is how much winning can you do? This is not me hating on Jimmy, right? This is me just trying to be real. Let's take Jimmy out of it. Let's just insert player X, Jimmy's skill set. This is not a personal thing. 13 Super Bowls. This is, if you think Matt Stafford, and some people think he is, some people think he's not. Let's assume Matt Stafford is not a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. How many Super Bowls have there been? Like 56?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. So out of 56 or so Super Bowls, 13 of those, if we assume Matt Stafford is not a Hall of Famer, have been won by non-Hall of Fame quarterbacks. So we already know that the exception is to win it with non-Hall of Fame quarterbacks. That is not the rule. It does happen. You can, the Dilfers and the Flaccos and the this and the that. That number drops even more significantly when you talk about players that have never made a Pro Bowl. And that number drops all the way down to 0 when you look at non-Hall of Fame quarterbacks that have gone to a Super Bowl and lost. They have never gone back to win a Super Bowl. If you lose it, you do not win it. So unless you're telling me that Jimmy Garoppolo, and maybe he is, maybe I'll have egg on my face at the end of the season. But if you're telling me that Jimmy Garoppolo is literally the biggest exception of all exceptions in NFL history, and you want to hang your hat on that and say we can win it with Jimmy, okay. I'm on the side of history. I'll take the side of history. I do think that they can win many games. We know they can make the playoffs. That's not up for debate. But when he has won 0 playoff games for you in 6 tries, I'm going to err on the side of history. He's not one of one. He's not special. He's none of those things. I'm rooting for him. I hope I'm wrong. I just want 6, man. I don't care how it happens. Hell, if they would have won it last year, dude, I would have, if you wanted to sign him to a lifetime contract, I'd have been like, yep, I don't give a damn. Put a trophy out front or a statue out front, a Levi's if you want a Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't care. Win the damn ring. I'm cool if they win the ring. I don't think that's a reasonable expectation. Seth Harvey says win. With Jimmy means no Super Bowl win. That's okay. I'm with you. We just talked about it.
I agree. I agree with it. So you're literally bringing up one of the biggest statistics in all of football, right? Like literally, it hasn't been done, right? So, but everyone's out here saying, "Well, Jimmy is a quarter. He wins. He just wins." All right, what Jimmy are we getting? Are we getting bad Jimmy throughout the entire season? Are we getting good Jimmy? Are we getting Jimmy that goes up and down? Because we literally saw, if we want to be 100% honest today, we literally saw Jimmy up and down. I don't care. You've been in the NFL for how many years? You know there's a chance you're going to be able to go in. You were up and down. First drive of the game, I literally I don't know if you saw the text. I texted you in a group chat. I literally said, Jimmy Garoppolo first drive looked phenomenal. After that, he struggled. People are they're gonna forget to talk about Jimmy because he won. Kudos to Jimmy Garoppolo. The 49ers defense gave you the ball at the 22-yard line. They gave you some free points right there. You got it done. Okay. You got it done against a shitty team. And I said the entire time the 49ers were going to blow out the Seahawks. So now that the fact that the fan base is now trying to rally around Jimmy Garoppolo, it blows my mind whether you're a Jimmy Garoppolo, because the fan base is divided by Jimmy Garoppolo supporters and Trey Lance supporters. Mm-hmm. Whether you're either one of those guys, you're going to have to rally behind, in my opinion, the defense and the run game, not any of the quarterbacks this year. That's what it always was going to be, the defense and the run game. And if you could have 2 of those, you're going to be successful and get deep into the playoffs. Even with Trey Lance, I did not think they were going to win the Super Bowl this year with Trey Lance. That's just me being 100% honest. So I can't sit here and say, okay, they're not going to win with the better quarterback, in my opinion, which is Trey Lance, because he provides more in the pass game, and then sit here and say, oh, they're going to win the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. If we look at what Jimmy Garoppolo did today, you could sit here and say, okay, Jimmy Garoppolo played phenomenal. 13 for 21. And if Trey Lance was 13 for 21, you know how bad he would be getting shamed on the timeline right now? People would be saying he only completed 61% of his passes. If he literally threw for what Jimmy Garoppolo did, which was 154, he would also be getting slandered on the timeline, no matter if he won or not. Like, he would be getting slandered because he did not put up exceptional numbers. People would be saying he is inaccurate. He only threw 61% completion percentage, and he only had 154 yards. Yet Jimmy Garoppolo does this, and he is seen as some kind of savior to this organization again. Like, also remember, Jimmy Garoppolo tore his ACL in 2018. Was that Kyle Shanahan's fault? No. So why all of a sudden is Trey Lance's freak injury Kyle Shanahan's fault? I don't get it. Just because he called a play call, both play calls called for the quarterback to eventually have to run. Trey Lance could have handed the ball off. It was a zone read. It was not a design run. It was a zone read. He pulled it and took it. Freak injuries happen, guys. Freak injuries happen. Let's kind of calm down a bit. The 49ers fan base needs to come together. We need to rally behind this defense and the run game. And let's hope we get deep into the playoffs. And hopefully you could get into the big dance and give yourself a chance. I don't think it's going to turn out how we all want it to be, but let's try to give ourselves a chance.
John says, talk me off the edge, Jesse. This feels like malpractice on Kyle's behalf. A fireable offense. If this season ends in anything less than a playoff berth, if they don't make the playoffs, I don't know. I don't want to go there. I think Kyle Shanahan is really, really good. I also think he's his own worst enemy sometimes. I'm not in the headspace. I got to be honest. I'm just not in the headspace to go with the pitchforks and fire Kyle Shanahan right now. I think it's a freak injury. It sucks. I think Marco said it really well. It's just one of those things, man. I don't know. I don't like that he was ran the way that he was, right? Especially early on. I mean, they were able to run the ball in this game, and he did run multiple times very, very early. But as Marco pointed out, this one was a choice of Lance, right? He could have handed it off there. He had the option. He kept it. Unfortunately, he got hurt. I don't want to blame Lance. I don't want to blame him. High Risk says, Jimmy haters keep crying. Your boy Lance is done. I'm out. This YouTube channel is a joke. Listen, don't let the door hit you on the way out. I got to be real. If your take is your boy Lance is done, that's where your mindset is after that. I don't know. I mean, he's a 49er, right? Are you a 49er fan or no? I just said that
last time I checked, Jesse did just say he literally tweeted as well. He is behind Jimmy Garoppolo because he is a 49er. But yet people were saying Lance is your boy. Obviously, Lance is his boy because he thought Lance was going to have a successful season. And obviously, he thinks Lance is going to have a successful career. He is not saying that Trey Lance was the only option, right? Like, literally, I don't get this comment only because you have literally said in the past that you're behind both quarterbacks because they're on the 49ers. You tweeted it earlier today, and this comment just blows my mind. It's uncalled for.
Al says, thoughts on play calling Trey versus Jimmy. It's certainly different, right? Like it's a whole different dynamic. And it's kind of funny because I feel like Kyle, there was one point in the game where I think he forgot who the quarterback was because I'm watching Jimmy hand the ball off and then run as if like he was going to keep it. And the defensive end is going to even remotely respect Jimmy running the ball, right? But it was funny because Jimmy carried it out like as if he could run the ball on a read option type thing. I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, no, listen, but it's funny. The defensive end was like, no, we're just crashing down on the running back. It was just kind of a funny moment where I kind of chuckled to myself a little bit. I'm like, Kyle, listen, Trey's not your quarterback anymore. You can just have Jimmy do regular handoffs. Like, that's totally fine. Michael says, are we all not Niner support? Exactly. And listen, I'm not going to act as if I'm holier than thou. You guys know where I stand on Jimmy Garoppolo. Anybody who's watched me over the course of the last couple of years, first of all, thank you for the support, knows that I think Jimmy's meh, right? He's a like I said, 17 to 22 quarterback. You can win games with that. I just don't think he's going to put you over the top. But I do not hate Jimmy Garoppolo. I've said it a million times over. I appreciate that he's remained professional. I appreciate that he doesn't become a malcontent when he easily could. He didn't try to force his way out of San Francisco. There are things on a personal level that I appreciate about Jimmy. It's not Jimmy's fault that they decided to keep him over guys like Tom Brady or to start him last year or to keep him this year. That's not Jimmy's problem, right? Like Jimmy's just trying to play football. Now, are my expectations of Jimmy that they go and win a ring? No. If that's hating, and I know you're not saying that, Michael, but if that's hating, then whatever. I don't really care. I mean, if I can't, I'm not going to please everybody. I've obviously pissed off a couple people in the chat so far tonight. It is what it is, man. I'm just giving you my thoughts. My expectations certainly have changed, but it doesn't mean I hate Jimmy. I just think that Trey Lance is the guy that can get him over the top. And it sucks because now he's out. KW says, does everyone forget that the Niners made the NFC Championship and a Super Bowl with Jimmy? Nothing is over. This notion is laughable. Listen, no, nobody forgets that. But as I said, history is on my side. Jimmy would have to be one of one. One of one to do. If Jimmy wins a Super Bowl, he's the only guy to do what he's done. The only guy. So maybe he can. Maybe this team can play perfect around him. I'm just not betting on it.
I'll tell you why he won't, Jesse. I'll tell you 100% why he won't. If we go back, like actually, because obviously the whole fan base is there's a lot of positives from what happened today, right? Like the 49ers, there was a lot of positives. So I kind of want to turn it to like a little bit more of not just necessarily us just talking about Jimmy Garoppolo and a Trey Lance debate, because like realistically, we're not going to get anywhere. Like obviously the team's going to have to move forward with Jimmy Garoppolo, and then the fan base is going to have to just jump on the wagon as a 49er fan and just ride it, right? So going to evaluate Jimmy Garoppolo after what he performed today, I thought Jimmy Garoppolo played like Jimmy Garoppolo has in the past. His first drive, Kyle instantly let him start letting it rip. He has a great drive. I believe that was a drive he had. He was 70 yards or something like that, a touchdown. But then if we go back and we look at Jimmy Garoppolo throughout the entirety of the game, he's missing wide open reads. On one instance, I saw it was a third down. He missed Ross Dwelly over the middle, wide open. Didn't get to that read. Ends up throwing a pass to Brandon Ayuk, which is almost intercepted. Now, if we look at what Jimmy Garoppolo was for what he was today, he had a great rush game. His running game was there. Jeff Wilson Jr. ran pretty hard today. I thought that was a good sign.
Can we give some love to Jeff Wilson Jr.? He was getting hammered this whole week. He played pretty damn good.
He made me eat my words. I didn't think Jeff Wilson was going to be what he was today. He made me eat my words, and I respect that he did that because he came out instantly 6 yards off the bat, 6 yards again, 8 yards. He was running very hard. So Jimmy Garoppolo had a great running game. Plus, the defense gave him three big turnovers, right? Like that's something huge for any quarterback. But I just thought throughout the entirety of the game, he was missing throws and he was making throws that you don't want to see your veteran quarterback that has taken you to a Super Bowl, taking you to the end. Like the reason why I'm putting air quotes is because this is what everyone constantly says about Jimmy Garoppolo. He's taken us to the Super Bowl, taken us to the NFC Championship. But when you look at what he has done, he's literally making the same mistakes. There was a couple passes that, in my opinion, should have been intercepted by Seattle. He got lucky that they weren't intercepted, because if they get intercepted, now you give Seattle life after a blocked field goal touchdown. And that's where, in my opinion, it's going to hold the 49ers back, because from the beginning of the game, Seattle was they backed off. They only had 7 guys in the box most of the time. And then even for the beginning of Jimmy Garoppolo, they had 7 guys in the box because Kyle was letting it rip. So they kind of played soft. And then as soon as they realized, you know what, Pete Carroll had to say something to his D coordinator. He had to have said something, because he literally, right after that, the touchdown, the second touchdown, they went 8 in the box for majority of the rest of the game, and they were forcing Jimmy Garoppolo to beat him with their arm. And you see kind of what he did. The running game bailed him out a few times. He had completed a couple of them. He got bailed out by a terrible, in my opinion, the Brandon Ayuk defensive pass interference call on him with the ball was 10 yards underthrown. In my opinion, that's one of the worst defensive pass interference calls for any team to get called on them, because the ball is literally so uncatchable. It's so bad to call that play, right? But he gets bailed out by that. So in my opinion, I thought if I was to give him a grade, I would give him a C grade. I thought he was average. I didn't think he was much better than a C. You could give him a C plus. I don't mind the C plus because of the win, but he wasn't good. He did not look like a quarterback that'll win a Super Bowl for us or even take us that deep into a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, he did some good things, right? Like, here's the thing. I was big on saying, listen, when it was a downpour the way that it was and raining the way that it was, for you to put that on Trey is hilarious. And I said it right during this game, right when it started raining. I go, expect that Jimmy struggles. He's going to start missing a lot of throws pretty bad here because it is starting to rain, right? And that's going to impact all quarterbacks. And that's exactly what happened. Thought he made a great throw to Ayuk that was dropped. And then there were some things that were not so good. Yeah.
On the throw you're talking about, are you talking about the back shoulder, the deep ball that Brandon
down the left
Ayuk
sideline
dropped on the left sideline? So I think that was a good throw. Now, instantly, I text my podcast partner, Rohan, and he was like, wow, Jimmy just had a great throw deep. And the first thing I said was, good throw, but that connection hasn't been there with Brandon Ayuk the entire time.
For sure. I said the same thing, yes.
Even going back to last year, right? Like, that connection with Brandon Ayuk has never been there. So him making that throw kind of confused me in a way because he's never completed that kind of ball to Brandon Ayuk. He's never completed that back shoulder throw. But then you make that throw, and it's like, okay, well, Brandon Ayuk's expecting you to air that out, expecting you to put it out there like you normally would. And then so in my opinion, I don't fault Brandon Ayuk on that. I think that was a great throw. But that chemistry, that connection has never been there. So I can't be like, hey, that's all on Brandon Ayuk, if that makes any sense to people.
No, I listen, he should have caught the ball in my opinion, but
I agree.
It's funny because I literally said the same thing. I go, man, for whatever reason, him and Ayuk are just not on the same page. And that's kind of been the case. Like those two, for some reason, haven't been. And we'll see. Hopefully it can develop, they can develop some chemistry as the year goes on. JR or Junior says, what can Trey do to develop with a leg injury? Well, I mean, first of all, Kyle said one of the things that he asked was, how were his reads before he went out? Like, how was he looking? What could he have done better? I mean, that's just the type of kid that we got. That's why I'm so confident in this kid going forward. He's going to get the mental reps, as much as he can. Obviously, we've talked about it extensively. You don't get better by not playing, right? Or you don't get much better by not playing. However, I believe that he's probably going to get all the game film. He's going to be bored. He's going to be doing as much as he can to mentally prepare. The flip side is he's not going to be around the team. I mean, what he got last year, I disagreed with. I thought he should have started and just gone through the ups and downs. He's not even going to get that this year because he's not going to be around the team. And when you're injured, you're just not. Now, he may later on get around the team as he heals up a little bit. We'll see. But those mental reps are going to be very different. So a lot of that's just going to be on him doing what he can to stay sharp, watching games and kind of picking things apart on his own, unfortunately. Flav says, although I've always thought Jimmy gives us the best chance to win this year, don't believe Jimmy can't win a Super Bowl. Our roster got worse with that injury. Praying for Trey and Jimmy to stay healthy. Yeah, that's the other thing, right? Like now we got to pray for Jimmy to stay healthy. Like we don't want to see Brock Purdy. I'll say that. Like there's a drop off, right? Go ahead.
Oh yeah. I think what he's trying to say is gives us the best chance to win this year and don't believe Jimmy can win the Super Bowl. That's I don't know if I'm right.
No. Trust me, that's not what he's saying. That Flav, just knowing who he is, that's not what he's saying.
The way I read it was that's because he said, although I've always thought Jimmy gives us the best chance to win this year, and don't believe Jimmy can't win a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
I read it as he. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I probably would have read it the same way, knowing Flav. That's not what he's saying at all.
Makes sense.
Just because, like I said, I know him. Jaheim says, these people praying for Trey's downfall. I have a message for you. Please pick another team because you aren't a 49er fan. Yeah, listen, if Jimmy had the catastrophic injury, right, and I wanted Trey to play, the message from me would not be like, yeah, we got it. We got our guy now. Thank you. Jimmy's out of the way. Like if Jimmy had gotten the catastrophic injury last year and this situation was reversed, come on, man. Like that's not the way that it is. Like we can't do that. KW says, Jesse, don't you think the 49ers brass and all fans counting Jimmy out is going to motivate him? If he wants to stay the starter, he's got a ball. No, because he has, to me, I actually think it's the opposite. I don't think Jimmy has zero pressure on his shoulders right now. Like literally zero.
He does. He does because
he's auditioning for another team.
So he does have the pressure on him because if he doesn't, for example, if he doesn't play lights out, he doesn't play to the extent where people think he is a starting quarterback in the NFL, then I believe he won't get that contract that he's looking for. He's playing for the last contract of his career, so he has a lot of pressure on him, and he has everything needed to succeed. So there's no excuses for him. So I think there's a lot of pressure on him still.
I'll put it this way. He has no pressure with this team. Like he has some pressure maybe for his future to play well, but even then he's $100 million man, right? I guess my point is with this team, he has no pressure. He has no pressure with this team. This team loves him. This team is filled with friends. This team is filled with allies. This team knows exactly what Jimmy is and Jimmy is not. And there is no other option, right? Like even last year, he was looking over his shoulder to a certain extent. That is not there at all anymore. It's just Jimmy. Like this is back to 2019 Jimmy, where he doesn't have to worry about anything, or 2020 Jimmy. That's where Jimmy's at. So to me, like he doesn't have pressure to go out and do anything crazy. Sure. Listen, I'm sure he's motivated, but motivation can only do so much. Like if I have limitations as to who I am, I'm motivated to get the best out of who I am, and I'm going to do that, but that doesn't mean that I'm just good enough in the end. Right? So we'll see. Listen, if I'm wrong and he's one of one and he does something that no other quarterback in history of this league has done, first of all, I'll be celebrating like there's no tomorrow. So I probably won't care what anybody's saying. But, after I come down from that high, then you guys can hold me accountable. That's fine.
If we win a Super Bowl, Jesse, you probably might not hear from me for a couple of weeks, to be honest with you. I'm gonna be on cloud nine. Like no one would hear from me on social media for a good while. I literally would probably go bananas to the point where it'd be insane. Like to be honest with you.
Yeah, for sure. Devin says now we're gonna see, right? See now Super Bowl roster, right? Yeah, I mean this was the talk, right? Like Trey's not ready. We can win with Jimmy. It's kind of Super Bowl or bust for that crowd. We will see. Will we see trade all? No. Base Spokane Niner fan. No, it doesn't sound like it. Broken ankle. They said season-ending surgery. This to me it's probably not as bad as Dax. I don't know if there was a compound fracture. I don't know if it actually came through the skin. Do you know, Marco? Maybe that came out at some point, but
no, we don't
look gnarly.
We don't know the extent of it. All we know is he's going to get surgery, and it most likely is season ending for him. But I have a question for you because I tweeted it out. Right? Let's say Trey Lance is at the point where it's not as bad as everyone thinks, and it's not the compound fracture, and it's just a fractured ankle, and he's able to come back, right? He's fit week 15, week 16. He's able to come back somehow, some way. Let's say his body heals very fast, which it could be. He's a young kid. He's only 22 years old, so his body's going to heal a lot faster than someone who's 30 years old, right? 32 years old. If he is ready to come back around that time, but the 49ers are in playoff contention, do you bring him back, or do you roll with Jimmy because they're headed into the playoffs? In my opinion, I go Trey Lance because he's the starting quarterback of your team. You said in the beginning of the season, you better go back to your starting quarterback. For example, if Cooper Rush leads the Dallas Cowboys into playoff contention, or like if Dak's injury is farther out, whatever, and they're in playoff contention, they're giving the damn team right back to Dak Prescott. So I don't see why they would, you know what I mean? So would you give it back to Trey Lance, or are you rolling with Jimmy Garoppolo?
I would have to see him be 110% healthy. If he's 99.9% healthy, no. Like, I just don't want to risk it, right? Like, again, to me, this is a bigger picture, right? I've been saying, like, I get it. Everybody, this is a Super Bowl roster and this and that. I've even said, let's concede that Jimmy is better right now. Like, let's say that that's the case, even though I don't necessarily agree. But let's say that's the case. I was willing to punt this season for Trey's growth, right?
I agree.
So I'm not going to be willing to put him on the line unless he's 110% healthy at any point this season, next season, until he is fully ready to go and risk it for the biscuit. That being said, if he's 110% healthy and it's week 15, I'm going with my starting quarterback. Like that's just
And
what I'm
just
doing. Yeah.
and just to be clear, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not saying that
Yeah.
the recovery time is
It
going to be
doesn't
week
sound
15, week
like that's going
17.
to be the case,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
maybe, right?
yeah. But I was just throwing a good question out there. But going to the
Yeah.
defense now, because before we get out of here, I want to talk about the defense. Right, there
Yeah.
was a lot of positives on the defense side of the ball. Jesse, we saw Talanoa Hufanga flying around, creating turnovers. We saw Fred
Yeah.
Warner doing his thing. Emmanuel Mosley, Charvarius Ward looked phenomenal. What did you see from this defense that gives you excitement that will be a big reason we could get back to a Super Bowl?
Yeah. I mean, quite frankly, I said going into this game on Grant's show, we talked about keys to this game. What has to happen for them to win? And I said, and this is true again, this is true whether it's Jimmy, Trey, whatever. I wanted to see this defense be dominant. Like last week, they were good. Don't get me wrong, they were good. They held Chicago to, nothing, but they weren't dominant. Like they weren't creating turnovers up and down the field. They weren't getting sacks all over the place. I wanted to see a dominant defense. Today, I saw a dominant defense. I saw a defense that was pissed. I saw a defense that didn't want what happened last week to happen again to them this week. I saw Greenlaw playing controlled. Listen, I know a lot of people had questions about Hufanga. I know a lot of people that liked Jaquiski Tart. Can we just concede right now, 2 weeks into this season, that Talanoa Hufanga is a freaking playmaker? That dude's around the ball all the time. And he's doing it without Jimmy Ward next to him. Okay? He's doing it with a guy that was not on this team until 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago or whatever in Gibson. Talanoa Hufanga is different. Okay? Now, he may have a play or two breakdown where he doesn't hold the levy, maybe the way that a Jaquiski Tart would. But on the flip side, he makes so many damn plays that it just does not matter. The guy is a ball hawk. He's a different animal out there. They got something special with Hufanga. Absolutely freaking special and nailed it yet again in the late rounds of the draft. Congratulations, because you got yourselves an absolute dog. And now I see why Tart was not an option to bring back. Now I see why he didn't get an exit interview, allegedly. Now I see the difference when you have a true ball hawking playmaker in the back end of that defense, what it can do. And I am so excited to see him next to Ward. Are you kidding me? How does any team throw on this secondary when it's healthy? Good luck to you quarterbacks, because that is not going to be an easy road for anybody.
So the reason why I'm laughing is because literally when I was at camp, his rookie year, which was last year, the first thing I noticed and the first thing I tweeted out was about him and Elijah Mitchell. Literally, that was the first two things I saw. I said, Talanoa Hufanga is a dude. He is around the ball every single play. He is constantly making plays. People were like, oh, he's slow, though. He's slow. He's not big enough. I don't care. When you're around the ball every single play, you're a stud. When you're creating turnovers, you're a stud. 2 weeks in a row, 2 turnovers he's created. He's making Gibson look like a starting safety in the NFL right now. Literally, he's making him look like he's legit. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about Drake Jackson because obviously, you know how I am, and everyone. I'm one of the biggest Talanoa Hufanga supporters there is. But now I want to talk a bit about Drake Jackson. I thought he had a phenomenal game in the run game and in the pass rush. So talk to me a little bit about what you saw from a couple of the rookies. We saw rookies, so rookies across the board. Sammy Womack played well. We also saw TDP, Burford's playing well. Talk to me about what the rookies you saw, and if that is excitement for the future. Because obviously, I don't think we're winning the Super Bowl, so I'm kind of shifting my focus. If you guys are kind of with me a little bit, I think we'll get deep into the Super Bowl, but I think this is a very big year for development for a lot of the young players, and it's going to suck because it's a wasted year for a lot of the guys in their prime.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if that's the case, I am excited about the development. And that's one thing, regardless of who the quarterback is. And I said it, kind of once I got my wits about me after finding out what's going on with Trey. Because initially when he got hit, I thought it was a concussion, right? Like it happened so fast, and he grabbed his helmet and I saw that he had stood up and then he went down and he grabbed his helmet. And so I was like, oh, he went helmet to helmet. That should be a penalty. Like I thought it was a concussion. Then they cut to commercial, and then I'm reading that the cart's coming out. It's a leg injury. I'm like, oh God, like what is going on? Um, but after I kind of got everything about me, I just said, regardless of Jimmy or Trey, like one thing that is good about this year, and I said it about Trey, is he's going to get better as the season goes along. Like as he gets comfortable, I think we can say the same thing about all the rookies, and especially those three. Listen, I know that not all of them are rookies up front, up the middle of that offensive line, but they're all still young in their development as far as what they've played in this league. We have to have grace with them as well. They're not going to be perfect, but I feel like as this season goes along, they're going to get better too, right? And so the rest of this team is just going to continue to get better. And it's funny because I thought the 49ers could go to the Super Bowl this year. I think Buffalo's the team to beat. I'm picking them to win the Super Bowl. I did it months ago. And regardless of who our quarterback is, I would have stuck to that no matter what. That being said, I think next year is really the year that you can make some noise. Now, with Trey not getting the time this year, I don't know. We'll see. But the rest of this team is going to be so much better, I think, even next year, which is crazy to think because this team can be really good this year and is really good right now because of guys like Burford, guys like Banks, guys like Jackson, guys like TDP or Mason. I just think overall this team is headed down a really good path. They've done such a fantastic job of drafting later in the draft. Some iffy things early in the draft, but I also think this team is arguably the best team in the NFL when it comes to development, and you're already seeing that tenfold early with some of these first and second year players. It's fantastic to watch.
No, I absolutely agree. Like you're saying, Spencer Burford, Aaron Banks, Brendel, we all be better next time we see Trey Lance around. And not only that, you're going to see young guys like Danny Gray get better. You're going to see guys like TDP get better. Elijah Mitchell will come back. He'll be healthy, hopefully, next time we see Trey Lance. It's just very frustrating to see a franchise quarterback go down the way he did, and then just seeing how the fans turned on him. But one of the things I really want to know, do you believe after what you've seen from this defense from the first 2 weeks, mainly this week, because everyone was hyping up Seattle. I said Seattle was a terrible team. I didn't get the gist of everyone hyping them up. I said they were a terrible team. So is it something to get excited about for this defense, or is it just Seattle was this bad that we should have expected this from the defense?
I got excited about it because I felt like they should have done the same thing last week, right? And again, it's not like the defense played bad. I'm not saying that the defense why they lost or whatever. I just felt like they weren't going into the season. I said this is the best secondary the 49ers have had since 94. And you pair it with that defensive line and those linebackers, which we know the front seven was already extremely good. I thought this could be the best defense that we've seen. I mean, maybe ever in San Francisco. I know that sounds crazy, but there's so much talent on this team. And so I expect them to be dominant. I really do. And like put fear in opposing players and opposing quarterbacks. And I felt like last week and good, the weather can affect that as well. Bosa talked about how it affected his get off. There wasn't a lot of throwing. I understand that. They did get the 1 turnover and 2 sacks, but like I went into that game going 5 sacks plus multiple turnovers. Let's be dominant. That didn't happen. So then I doubled down this week. We got to get a lot of sacks. We got to get a lot of turnovers. They got to be dominant. They got to strike fear in the opposing offense. And I felt like they did just that. So to me, I'm not like overly excited because it was Seattle, but I am excited because they did what they should do, right? You can only play who's in front of you. They did what they should do. And just a little precursor to next week, Denver doesn't look like world beaters. So they could do the same thing to Russell Wilson next week.
I absolutely agree with what you said. Now, we saw a little bit of different um, Jimmy Garoppolo a little bit as soon as he came in, right? We've seen him taking shots downfield, taking shots towards the numbers. Now, is this something we should expect from Jimmy Garoppolo,
No.
or do we think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to go back to being what he did in between the numbers, getting that yak? Because if you look at what Jimmy Garoppolo did, he was 14 for 21, or 13 for 21, sorry, 154, but he was taking shots downfield. One of the passes should have been intercepted down the field, taking a shot to Danny Gray, took a shot deep to Brandon Ayuk. So he was trying to push the ball downfield, which is a little interesting because that's not what we normally see from Jimmy Garoppolo. Do you think Kyle Shanahan will go into the game plan versus Denver and say, "Hey, Jimmy, that's not your style of game. I understand that's not your style of game. I know you're auditioning for another team next year, but I'm going to put you in the most successful situation and go heavy run, play action, yard after the catch, kind of dink and dunk kind of style of that gets kind of the fans a little frustrated in terms of wanting to see explosive offenses, but they're efficient offenses. Do you see the efficient yet non-explosive offense, or do you think Jimmy's going to be trying to be explosive with all the playmakers he has?
Yeah, I think that's up to Jimmy, right? Because like how much confidence does he have in his arm? Like if he makes one of those throws and it turns into a pick six, does he go into a shell? Because I think the plays are always there. I think the shot plays have always been there, right? So for me, I think that all comes down to Jimmy. I think maybe early on we might see him take some of those chances. I just want to see how he reacts after a bad pick. And I don't want him to stop making those throws if it's something he feels like he can make, because I feel like those throws have always been there. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, the shot plays will be there. Will he take them? I don't. That's a whole different whole different thing. So we'll see. Let me get through these super chats real quick. Matthew says
Okay.
you don't get bitten by a shark when you don't go into the ocean. You also don't learn how to swim potentially. You don't lose your franchise quarterback to a running injury when your QB doesn't run the ball. That's fair. That's fair. Listen, Matt. I don't want to like push back too much because a lot of you guys seem to have this feeling on Shanahan. I just disagree. I mean, I'll say this. Yes, he plays Shanahan differently than Shanahan plays Trey differently than he does Jimmy G. But Jimmy G doesn't have that extra element. What I said about Shanahan live during the game today is for anybody that's played Madden, you know exactly how this feels. You play Madden, you use a quarterback that throws the ball. That's what your game is. Then all of a sudden you get your hands on a Lamar Jackson or a Michael Vick. And you forget how to throw the ball. You just turn into, you want to run everywhere. You want to make all these amazing plays. Like that's what people do when they play Madden and they use a running quarterback for the first time. I feel like Shanahan's low-key kind of the same way. He looks at it and goes, okay, yes, I can throw the ball, but I got this guy that can do all these things that I've never had at my disposal. Let's go out and just make him a running back for a while. Like, it sucks, but that's kind of the feeling that I get. It just really is. I don't know. He also says you can't put it on Lance. He's out there following orders. He's young, trying to prove himself. His coach is supposed to support and protect him. I agree. I don't put it on either of them. I just think some people did put it on Lance, but I'm with you on that, Matt. The Goose says, I still expect the 49ers to make a run to the Super Bowl if they stay healthy. Well, now Jimmy's got to stay healthy. That's, he hasn't been picture perfect health either. They need him to stay healthy because Purdy, there's a drop-off, major drop-off between Jimmy and Purdy. It makes me upset that this delays another season of development for Lance. I'm with you, man. It certainly does. It stunts his growth 100%. Flav says the truth is what the team thinks is most important thing, and these guys have always believed in Jimmy. Could be worse. Could be rooting for Sudfeld. I don't disagree there. I definitely don't want to see Sudfeld under center. So I'm with you. I'd much rather see Jimmy than Sudfeld. No doubt about that. Greatness 54 says an emotional reaction to a freak injury. We must get behind the team. Forever faithful. I'm with you, man. That's what I tweeted out. Regardless of Jimmy's your guy, he's not. Trey's your guy. None of that stuff matters now. We got to just get behind this team. Mike S says everyone approaches this differently. Some are team first fans. Other fans are coach. Others are players first, playoff or bust with this roster. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think playoffs should be expected. They were expected with Trey. They should be expected with Jimmy. Double B Studio says, I feel so bad for Trey. I love my team, love other Niner fans and y'all, but Kyle, I don't trust his decision making. Trey should have never been drafted. Should have bulked up the team for the Super Bowl run, but for what? Like, unless you think Jimmy's it, I guess. Donald Johnson says, I've never seen a fan base this more delusional than the Jimmy fan base. The Jimmy fan base aren't Niner fans. Trey goes down and they are happy. I won't say the Jimmy fan base isn't Niner fans, but those that are like happy that Trey's injured and we're here and trying to play the I told you so game after an injury, I'm not with it, man. I'm just not. 49ers Daddy says, Jessie, I'm crushed. Really hurts and praying for Lance. Season feels wasted. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of my initial thing. You don't get to develop the young quarterback, which is what this season was about. To me, that's more important than anything that they could win this year. Unless they win a Super Bowl, then it's not wasted. All right, Dan says, so we're going to need a trade for a better backup quarterback, right? Because everyone knows you need a good backup, and Purdy's a rookie, half joking.
That is a great – that's not a joke. That is an absolutely 100% great comment, right? Because the entire fan base, when Jimmy Garoppolo was brought back, there was a very big part of the fan base that was like, that is the best move we've ever seen, blah, 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 blah. That is amazing, right? Now, how would that fan base feel if the 49ers went out and forced Ryan Fitzpatrick, which is a solid backup, probably one of the better backups out there right now, or you go and trade for another backup that's in the NFL? How would the 49er fan base feel if they went out and traded for a backup? They would probably be pissed off because this showing the 49ers have potentially fear that Jimmy Garoppolo could potentially be hurt. And I think the 49er fan base would be kind of mad about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, probably. William says if they don't win the Super Bowl, Kyle has to go. Give the team to Ryans or get Saleh back if he gets let go. Kyle has mismanaged picks and talent and sub 500 record. Big playoff blunders. When we run into a special QB, it's over. Man, that's it's a strong take, man. It's a strong take. Listen, I'll say this. I'm not ready to go out and fire Kyle now. Trust me, you can find those tweets from me when they started 3-5 or whatever last year. I was, if they didn't make the playoffs last year, I was all over that. That being said, I think we're somewhere in the middle. I think some people think Kyle's the best coach in the world, and he is not that. Like, not yet anyways. He can be, he has to win a ring. He can be, but there are some things that are to be desired about Kyle. But it could be a lot worse than Kyle. I'll say that too. Like, it could be a lot worse than Kyle. Have you seen some of these coaches? Haha says, this is a rerun that doesn't end in a ring. Go Dubs. Yeah, hey, for you guys that are from the Bay, at least you got a ring somewhere, right? Like, I don't have that. I'm a Blazer fan. Can I get some love over here? I'm a Blazer fan and a Duck fan. Like, it's the Niners are bust for me.
Yeah.
We saw T.O. come back from a similar injury. Yep. They're kind of going back to your point earlier when you were talking about what if he's able to come back at some point this season? What do you do? That's
the thing
interesting.
Is the reason why I say this, Jesse, is because I know Trey Lance is going to be that guy who is working his way to get.
I did. Yeah. Remember when he was trying to punch the ball out? I definitely saw that.
He was like hammering that. I was like, God. And like, if you were listening to the broadcast, they're like, Jesus Christ, he's throwing haymakers at him.
I couldn't hear.
He was nowhere near the ball. He was hitting. He was hitting him in the chest like hard. I was like, all right. But the reason why I bring up potentially Trey coming back is because I know Trey Lance is more of a pocket style of quarterback. He doesn't want to run, doesn't like to run like that. Like, that's not what he wants to do. But if it's designed and it's called, he's going to do it, right? So I think that's where I believe he could come back, and I think he would obviously take care of himself. He really wanted to run and be more so passing and allowing him to develop at that point. And I think it would be kind of wise to do so if they're in that situation, in my opinion. Just throw it there.
Absolutely. I'm going to try to fire through these super chats because I got to be honest, my voice is shot. I just did a 3-hour game, and now I'm this, and my voice it's given out. Like, I'm coughing every 2 seconds over here. Adam says, did anyone else see great? Yeah, that's the one. Okay. Double B Studio says, to those saying we won, be happy. I'm happy they won, right? Again, I'm a Niner fan, but I can't help but to feel for Trey Lance. The anger as is it costed us 3 first-round picks, non-QB next year. I believe Trey is broke mentally. I wouldn't go that far. I don't think Trey's that guy, man. I think it's going to take a lot more than this for Trey. I will say this, a guy that Trey should lean on is Bosa. Let's not forget, Bosa went through something very similar here, right? Second game of his second season, lost his ACL. He can lean on Bosa here.
You can lean on him too in a way.
Yep.
You know?
No, that's a good point. I mean, Jimmy, 3 games into season 2. These things happen, man. I don't think this is going to break Trey. I really don't. If you think Trey is as mentally strong and as mentally fit as we've been talking about, I think in a week your mind will change on that one. JR or Junior says, if Jimmy G would have been cut like he should have, would Kyle be so eager to use Trey as a fullback? Now, that's a good question. This I'll entertain. Guess he didn't learn from RG3 absurd. I will entertain that. My guess is he probably wouldn't have used him the same. I don't think he would have ran him as much. I'm with you on that. That's kind of where I'm at. I agree on that front. I do personally.
Likewise.
The regular Ryan says Subway told Kyle to hurt Trey so Jimmy could come in and sell some more Italian subs. Double B. So this is why I love this fan base. You guys are hilarious no matter what. Double B Studios says, when I say Trey shouldn't have been drafted, I was talking about Kyle should have traded for a QB already developed instead of a rookie because he can't develop them. Yeah, listen, I think I thought that's where you were going with it. I got you. Miguel says it's criminal how Kyle called plays for Lance. Jamaican Boy says injury is on Lance. Just slide, man. Damn it, Kyle. Looks like he's pissed at both. The coach says biggest lesson I learned today is we don't have fans of the team. We have Kyle Shanahan fans, Jimmy fans, and Trey fans. Trey's injury is making everyone walk into their own corners and strike up narratives. Rest up, Trey, 2023. That's why I'm kind of glad that for the most part, I mean, you'll still see me post on Twitter, but I'm not really on Twitter like that anymore. It's just toxic, man. Waruna says, I'm not trusting Kyle anymore. I'm not enjoying the win because of my franchise number 1 got injured, not because I hate Jimmy. Getting to the playoffs this year with Jimmy is just a waste of time. Flav says, let's be honest, I think people would be mad at Kyle if Trey got hurt running the ball no matter what. But we're also mad when he used him like Jimmy. So Kyle is kind of in a lose-lose situation. Necessarily fully disagree with that. Dustin says certain quarterback plays have inherently higher risk than others. I think calling it just a freak accident is a cop-out and not properly examining the risk-reward calculations of calling those plays. It's kind of a freak injury. I mean, how many broken ankles has Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen? I mean, Josh Allen trucks more people than whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. Like, obviously this happened running, but a lot of those quarterbacks that are mobile get hurt when they're in the pocket, right? Because they didn't protect themselves the way that they can. It's still a freak injury. To have your ankle snapped in half is still a freak injury, no matter how you slice it. Sure, maybe the risk is higher when you run. That's fair. I'm not saying you're completely off your rocker here, but to me, it was still a freak injury. It just is, man. You don't just roll your ankle in half. Like, that's not a normal thing. It sucks, but it's not normal. Listen, Marco, thank you for joining. Everybody, top of the chat is Marco's channel. It's him and Rohan run a channel together, 49er Red Zone. It's pinned to the top of the chat. Just click the link and hit subscribe. Show him some love. Get over to Grant's channel. I know he's going live here shortly. My voice is shot. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Stay blessed. And we'll get through this. We'll get through this, faithful. It's going to be a good season regardless. There's a lot good to talk about, and we'll get through it together. Appreciate y'all.